It was just now in our 7th year that we bought our first asset. We had no debt, we had no assets going into this. So we've made it 7 years, and we're running just under $1 million of gross with no debt and no assets. It is possible. It is possible to do, and it is about relationships and trust. Because if we didn't trust the farms, that they're keeping the the cold chain running, they're being honest about how they're farming, we wouldn't be in business.
Welcome to Rooted Barn Talks. I'm Amelia Ihlo, and today we're going to be getting creative about resourcing with Sheri Howard of Seasonal Harvest. Sheri co-owns a food hub in the Green Bay, Wisconsin area, and they are in their 8th year of operating to serve that region, and they're expanding every year. Creative resourcing is a topic that's near and dear to our hearts because it's a reality for all of us who are running our farms, and in particular, our hubs. We're going to be talking about how Sheri and her partner have approached resourcing and when and where they've decided to invest in their hub. We're also going to hear a lot about the importance of networking as it relates to this creative resourcing challenge. Sheri's been running her food hub for over 8 years now, and she and her team do a really great job of approaching growth super intentionally. So we are very appreciative that she is willing to share some of the lessons that they've learned along the way. By the end of this episode, you should have a new perspective on how centrally your network plays into your own resourcing decisions, and you should find some inspiration about how to collaborate with your own members as you work toward those goals that you all have for growing. We will also have a resource in the show notes to offer some additional thoughts on how to demystify the process of identifying grants relevant to your community. Let's dive in. We're talking today with Sheri Howard of Seasonal Harvest in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Today we're going to be diving into creative resourcing. And, I think for us that really means thinking about all the different ways that we can really drive our business forward. And, I think for a lot of us who are managing hubs, it's we can feel or we can actually be really resource constrained. And so there is this need for us to invest, and also the very real constraints of, capital and really resources across the board. And so creative resourcing, I think we want to be talking about money and capital. We want to be talking about different assets and investments that we can make, different ways to really be thinking about kind of outside the box ways to drive our business forward. So, Sheri, give us sort of kind of the elevator pitch of your business and your Seasonal Harvest, and kind of how long you've been around, what you really focus on, just so that everybody kind of has a sense for that.
Sure. Well, in a nutshell, Seasonal Harvest was started in 2018 by myself and my partner Darren. Darren does run a farm.
Yep.
I'm a retired businesswoman, so the business side was natural for me and the farming side was natural for him. I did have some farming background, so I wasn't coming in completely unaware.
Yep.
And we started with a handful of farmers and a handful of customers.
Yep.
And our real goal was, we recognized that farmers were trying to get into these wholesale markets and literally stumbling over each other at the doorstep of the customer.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're killing ourselves here. We should just collaborate, do one delivery, one source of ordering. The customers will be happy, and we won't all be driving to the same place at the same time. So that's,
and those
really,
economics are typical
they
for
are
hubs
very
and how
typical.
they get started and how we think about kind of economies of scale.
Right. There's always been, and I still find this today, some mistrust that somehow collaborating doesn't work for people, that it's a competitive market and I want a piece of this,
The scarcity mindset.
Yeah, and honestly, we've found it to be 100% in the opposite direction. The collaboration has been good for everyone, everyone. So we started in that way. In our first year, like I said, a handful of each. I think our first year we did about 80,000 in sales.
Yep.
And now fast forward, we'll just be finishing starting our 8th year here. And we've added a part-time person in all those years. We have,
one part-time person.
One part-time person to work sales. I no longer work 12-hour days, and Darren has a farm to run. So we're all basically part-time.
Yep.
And we're running somewhere between $900,000 and $1 million of gross through our business, still with our limited resources.
That's really exciting progress. And I think especially when we're thinking about sort of where you started and the resources you had and that evolution and how that's transformed for you over the years, because you are still resource constrained, and I think you're still very mindful of how and when and where to make investments in your business and how to take on different opportunities. But I think those early days were especially constrained, right? You had $1,000.
We had $1,000, my $1,000.
Yeah.
Was my entry point. And we really needed that $1,000 to just do the basics.
Yep.
We used LegalZoom to get our partnership in place.
Yep.
I got a subscription to QuickBooks because we needed a good accounting platform.
Yep.
And I invested in Google Workspace so that Darren and I could collaborate in one spot. Those were really our only investments up front. And then it was a matter of our labor was our investment.
Yeah, the sweat equity to really kind of bring that business from concept stage to getting it off the ground and actually kind of getting out there into the market. So I think, you know, this whole series that we're doing here is really intended to give space to folks who are sitting in these seats of, you know, you are a hub manager, you're a hub owner, you are on a board of a co-op, you are really driving an aggregator forward, and you are looking to make some changes potentially and really thinking through, how do I think about this process? How do I really do a deep dive here? And so the goal of this series is to really give space to reviewing your business, refining where it feels like it really needs some attention, and then refocusing where you're going to be looking over the next, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months as you're moving forward. Because I think that's the goal for us, right? Is that not that we just make it through this month or this season, but that we're building systems that have lasting staying power,
right,
and can transform this agricultural economy that we're all operating in. So I think a really key piece of that is this creative resourcing. And it's something that, I think you are really skilled at looking outside the box there. So I'm curious if you can talk to us a little bit about some of the creative ways that you've approached this over the years.
Sure. We knew, again, you used the word intentional, and I can't stress that word enough. We looked at what we needed to functionally run the business. We also looked at what we were able to and willing to invest of our own personal time. And that included what skills do we have and what skills are we missing.
Yep.
And so we took a hard look at what we felt we needed to run the business, not necessarily what we'd like. So the like to need ratio at this point was probably 90 to 10. 90% of what we did, it's because we needed to do it.
Yeah.
And then we looked to see, what are we missing that's preventing us from going forward? And that's where we said, we don't think we need any more labor. We're not going to try to grow our customer base yet.
Yep.
All of the farms who came to us because they heard about what we were doing.
Yep.
Maybe they were at the same farmers market as one of our other, so word of mouth.
Yeah.
We tried to accommodate, but even there, we took a very slow approach until we were sure that our model was solid.
Yep.
And we could operate through the first year.
And in that first year, you were really creative. You did not pay yourselves as owners. And your goal was to basically cover costs. And there was some, you can think about a lot of different ways to approach payment.
And when you look at where does that cost come from, just starting up a business like this, so we're a food hub, transportation is one.
Yep.
Driver is another, your employees. Where are you going to house this stuff? Yeah. So do you have refrigeration?
Facilities.
Do you have facilities? Yep. How are you going to get to your customers? What systems do you have in place? And so we looked at all of that, and there was no way we could afford it in the beginning, nor did we want to.
Right.
Now, we were lucky that
Because there's risk. I think that's
there's
important.
risk.
There's a lot of risk in investing too early
Right.
in too much infrastructure.
too much. And so we went out to the vendors we had and said, tell us about your resources. Who has a refrigerated truck that would be interested in driving if we pay your driver time
Yep.
and your mileage? Who has refrigeration on site that if we pay you, by the pallet, by the day, however that's going to be, we don't have to build we don't have to have a facility. So we used my partner Darren's farm, and we paid him rent.
Yeah.
Right? So the rent was way less than investing in a new building. We decided not to hire any employees. So all of these farms had drivers. We paid them to keep their drivers employed.
Yeah.
So it kept us out of the uninsured business, all of the insurance that we would have needed. We just didn't go there. We did not hire our first employee until we were 6 years into our business.
Yeah.
And it was really just the two of us. And so everything else we needed, we found in our community, in our networking. We found a nonprofit who wrote grants who could help us with the grant work.
Talk more about that networking, because I think that's a place where so many opportunities have been unlocked by your network. And I think we've talked before about how that's sort of the one thing you wish you had done sooner.
Yeah.
Was start opening those doors.
I was grant averse, I'll say it. I was grant averse in the beginning because I didn't have a lot of background in it. I knew a lot of the grants were coming out of some type of a government, offering.
Yep.
The paperwork was going to be a lot. I was the only person doing the business side. My partner Darren did all the logistics and the vendor interface, right? So that's how we divided, his skills, my skills. But to take on that work of writing a grant when I was also doing the weekly sales, there was no time.
Right.
I mean, we've talked before about you're too busy.
Yeah.
And so finding somebody to work with us, which we came upon a nonprofit in Green Bay called Wello. We ran into each other kind of accidentally.
Yeah.
She had a grant and she had a customers expecting food, and the farm that they were going to work with had to back out at the last minute.
Yeah.
So we actually met in the parking lot. She's like, could you deliver this to us tomorrow?
Yep.
And a new partnership was born.
Yeah.
And we've been tied at the hip for years. That's just not an area of expertise that I felt I needed to grow. Now, I had done one grant on my own, but I participate in a lot.
Yep.
I'm just not the writer.
Yep.
I didn't feel like I needed to become
Well, you weren't
that.
always the writer, but you've become a writer on some
co-writer,
awards, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
So I think, when we talk about grants, let's do a deep dive. So,
Okay.
so when we talk about grants, I think they're if you have not yet stepped into any sort of grant writing, if you have not yet pursued a grant, it can feel intimidating for somebody who has not, they just don't have experience either in kind of an off-farm job or through their hub or whatever. The world of grant writing, the world of pursuing those awards can feel kind of like huge and scary. And intimidating. And so I think the first question is sort of what are all the ways you've come across these grants? Like the first meeting with Wello was, they already had something.
Yeah.
But there have been places where you are really exploring opportunities. I'm thinking about some of the school funding that you've worked on, I think through DOD grants, is that right?
These have been through our DPI, Department of Public Construction, where
Okay.
the schools are funded.
Yep.
Everything, even from the federal level, rolls through your state DPI in most states.
Got it. Okay.
So part of this, again, goes back to networking. So we introduced ourselves to the DPI representatives, our DATCAP, our Department of Ag, and we made sure we made relationships there.
Yeah.
And asked them to keep us in mind when grants were coming up, asked them to partner with us.
Yep.
Asked our customers, and because we're wholesale institutional, they know when grants are coming their way. What can we work with you on?
Yeah.
So I've also contacted just another private grant writer who as a courtesy, sends out notifications anytime there's grants that might be of use to us. They just come in an email.
Right.
I get to decide. So I'm not out there purchasing grant software to go looking for them.
Right.
They come to us.
Yep.
And we pass by a lot of them because there's no such thing as free money.
Yeah.
That's just a concept you have to get out of your head. It's a leg up, and many of them require match, even though you can match with in-kind labor. We didn't have a lot of cash. So if there was a big match and we didn't have it, we just passed by.
Yeah.
We missed a lot of that, and we still do. But the grant world, it's just an interesting world, and I would highly recommend, if you are not that grant writer, partner with somebody who knows the world.
Yeah.
That's the best advice I can give you. Somebody you can trust, somebody who understands your business, and that their grant writing, what they're going after, marries up with what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So in our case, it's food,
Yep.
right? It's the delivery of food often.
And grant writers can specialize. They can have different areas of focus. So we work with a grant writer who specializes in a lot of federal funding, but there are folks who really specialize in more state funding or private institutional funding. And there are also resources for you. We're going to try to build a set of resources that we'll link to in the show notes here, just on ways that you can try to, find grants yourself, both federal and state, and then also resources on writing, because I think how we put together our grant application is everything. Right? Like there's so much anticipation that we have to do as we're writing our grants to really think about what those reviewers might be looking for. Can you talk a little bit about how you think through that process?
It is. It's an art, and it's a job in and of itself, because if you believe that whatever opportunity you're trying to take advantage of, this grant money is a perfect fit. You have to recognize, if it's a national grant, you're up against people from all over the country. You have to understand who the grant reviewers are and what it is they're looking for. So even who's producing the grant. Government grants, I will say, are just as picky about who they're targeting as, say, a foundation or a philanthropical grant. So make sure it's not just that you think that this grant would work really well for your project, it's that your project would work really well with this grantee.
And I think we'd be remiss not to call out that what federal funding opportunities and probably even state funding opportunities look like today may not be what they looked like 6 months ago or a year ago or 3 years ago or however many years ago. But I think one thing that we've observed, at least in all of our work working on grants, has been that the process is sort of this reconciliation that we do as a business between what are the strategic priorities that whoever has written the grant. So whether it's a private institution, a foundation, or it's a federal or a state organization, typically they seem to have strategic priorities that you are meant to address in your grant. Do you find that that's the case?
Absolutely.
And so tailoring.
Creative writing.
Creative writing.
Let's call it what it is. Creative writing is an art. It is a skill. People who do grants, writing for a living, it's like anything else. They're the experts on making your idea, your pitch, come to life using the words that those reviewers are looking for. Your grant writer is another partner. And you don't have to be everything to everybody. You don't have to have every skill. Find the right partners.
And you're not going to get all the grants that you apply for.
I think
that's just simply part of the process, is going through that rejection. But I think it is a really key tool for us to have in our tool belts, especially when we're thinking about new investments. Because there's a difference between using a grant to fund your ongoing operating expenses versus using a grant to fund a key investment in a new piece of equipment or infrastructure or something that can be a long-term asset and investment for your business, right?
Absolutely. We've never used grants to fund our current operating model, ever. So there are really two kinds of grants in our world because we're a food hub. There are grants to pay for food, and that's all they're used for. There's no labor in there. You're literally just buying food from farms and giving it to, say, schools or pantries. So those grants, they come during the pandemic. They really ramped up. And they're fairly straightforward. They're some of the easiest ones to write. Then there are grants that will allow you to build forward. Now, the recent RFSI grant that came out, and every state was eligible for some of that, is the first time that I had ever seen capital allowed in a grant, capital investment. And so when we looked at that and said, well, what do we want? We didn't look at our operation and say, well, this is failing or this needs to be replaced. We looked at it and said, what takes us 3 years out from now? And so one of those things was we needed our first truck. So we used the grant, part of the grant for that. Another one was we have so many small farms who do not have access to field water and refrigeration that we really felt that by putting in a pack wash shed with a larger refrigerator would give us the ability to stay current with food safety and allow us to bring in vendors who otherwise would struggle because they don't have a place to go with their food.
Now you're 8 years in and you're making those decisions, right? And so I think if we could take a step back and rewind, so we're thinking about sort of how do we creatively get to these places. There were places where you were leaning on your vendors, leaning on your suppliers to fill gaps for you. Do you still do that? Is that
We still do that. We still, we had a lot of farms now who've invested in refrigerated trucks. Trucks and drivers are a huge expense, and the liability and the insurance, it goes a long ways. And so we still have a standing order with our farms that if they have a refrigerated truck and they're properly licensed and insured, we use them to expand the scope of Northeast Wisconsin out of just Green Bay. So we pay somebody to go north, we pay somebody to go up into the peninsula, out to the lakeshore. And once a week, when they come to drop off their own food for our weekly order, they pick up their orders, they go, they bill us, we pay them.
And that utilizes their asset that otherwise might not be utilized
Fills
during
the
that
truck.
time.
So that was a big one for us to not bring on employees. The other one is the refrigeration. So if you have refrigeration, could we use you as a hub? So you have a large enough walk-in cooler, but I've got 3 farms in your location who don't. Could I pay you
basically to
rent that space and then bring that product with you when you come? Yes, we pay the round trip. So scaling for us, we never put a dime into the actual infrastructure. We just put it into paying people that we're partnering with. And it has been a win-win.
And that's a lower risk way to really structure your own growth, is that you aren't building this sort of overhead, because anytime you invest in an asset, even if the initial expense is offset or covered, you're still taking on the maintenance for that asset. And so whether it's a vehicle or a new facility or a shed, you're going to have those ongoing expenses. So I think what's interesting here is that you don't with a lot of those, right? Because you're just simply paying to rent other people's resources, essentially.
It was just now in our 7th year that we bought our first asset. We had no debt, we had no assets going into this. So we've made it 7 years, and we're running just under $1 million of gross with no debt and no assets. It is possible. It is possible to do, and it is about relationships and trust. Because if we didn't trust the farms, that they're keeping the cold chain running, they're being honest about how they're farming, we wouldn't be in business if we couldn't have that trust.
I want to shift gears a little bit back toward some of these investments that you've been able to make. So, I think what was really neat to see when we were out there visiting was, there have been opportunities that you have found, especially through your work with schools, where you learned that they were struggling with labor. They didn't have the labor to be able to process. And so being able to, basically take your raw veg and turn your carrots into sticks or diced or chopped or whatever the condition is that they need to be in order to go onto trays without that intermediate labor in the kitchen. You were working with processors for a time, and then you invested in some equipment through some grants. Talk about kind of how that happened and what that looked like for you.
This was actually, again, it was an identification that we had all our eggs in one basket, one processor, and if that processor goes down, then the business we've built goes down with it. So another Wello partnership for a block grant that gave us just $10,000 to purchase equipment.
Yeah.
And my partner Darren actually was able to arrange with one of his retail customers. She had a huge space that wasn't being used.
Yep.
Let him come in for a small rent and electrical and kind of retrofit and make a certified kitchen. So he invested in the kitchen portion,
Yep.
but through the grant we were able to buy ourselves a large RoboCoo and the other equipment we needed.
Yep.
And we started the grant small, one customer,
Yep.
and we fulfilled the requirements of the grant
Yep.
through, starting to process more and more. It was a learning curve for them to get the kitchen running. And now a year later, we've quadrupled the amount of food that's just coming out of this tiny little kitchen, and they're actually looking at building now a bigger kitchen.
Yep.
But that grant allowed us to do just a mini pilot to see, is this feasible? And since then, we've got another farm now who applied for a grant and is putting in a certified kitchen, and processing is on the list. But even there, we took a look at how we're processing and what we're still missing.
Yeah.
We don't have access to a flash freezer.
Yeah.
They're going to invest in they're going to invest in freeze dryers.
Yeah.
And so we're not duplicating. It's like I tell all of the farms, please don't everybody grow sliced tomatoes,
Yeah.
because slicing tomatoes
Yeah.
are a dime. Find something else.
Yep.
And so we coordinated, and they're building something just a little bit different.
Yep.
We can still support each other for some redundancy, but it was a relationship issue.
Yeah, for sure. So as we're thinking about creative resourcing and we're thinking about, sort of decision points to invest, we've talked about grants, we've talked about different sources of capital. I think another important resource is human resources, right? Like the people who are actually doing the things. You went for 6 years not hiring any employees. Now, obviously, you had drivers who you were working with, kind of your supplier farms, and that needed to happen in order to kind of get the product from A to B. But you didn't have any sort of administrative help until a couple of years ago when you hired Bridget. What did that decision look like to you? Like, what precipitated you saying, yeah, I think we need to bring someone else on?
Well, part of that was business growth. So at the time, up to that point, I was doing the weekly sales.
Yep.
We have a very tight routine, but the more customers, the more vendors that we were using, the more of my time that took.
Yeah.
But I was also responsible for our strategic planning, our growth plan, our legal, our financial, all of that. And so it literally was, all right, I've maxed myself out. I have a family, I have kids, I have grandkids, I have a spouse, and when my time started to interfere with my family life, that was a big one.
Yeah.
And also that I felt I'd been operating under this same system for so many years, I needed fresh eyes.
Yeah.
And so we knew right from the beginning how much money we would need to gross with our small margin before we could bring somebody on and pay them a good wage.
Yeah.
So we had reached that milestone and still waited another year to find the right person.
Yeah.
But it was really a matter of, if we're going to continue forward here, I need to start looking at strategy.
Yeah.
I need to start looking at building relationships across the state
Yep.
and out of the state, not just within the Green Bay area.
So it was really sort of that intuitive recognition that what you were doing 5 years in wasn't going to serve you at 10 years in.
Right.
And mapping out sort of, if you wanted to be here, wherever here was, at your 10-year mark, what did you need to change about your current systems? Which I think is a really important reflection point
Yep.
that not all of us do on a regular enough basis. Is that something that you do with any sort of cadence, or is it just sort of like a continual reflection on things? How does that work for you?
Well, it is an annual process that we go through,
Yep.
Darren and I, and now with Bridget. We do this every year in January. We look at everything, our pricing, our processes, who are our customers, who are our vendors, what do we need to change, what
Yeah.
products do we need to offer that we're not. So that's part of our annual business, but anytime we're going to make a major change, and that includes applying for a grant,
Yeah.
we relook at that. Now, I'll say one thing in the beginning, because I'm a technology person,
Yep.
we did invest in the second year in good computers, large monitors,
Yep.
and getting a Google workspace so that we could share our information
Yeah.
without going through email.
Yeah.
In the first year, we
Yeah.
just email, text, phone. It was the yellow tab.
Yeah.
But that was a need. We had a need to share in order to cover each other.
Yep.
So we did invest in that, and we didn't go hog wild,
Yep.
and we did not invest in marketing.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people would say, "Boy, you start your business, you got to have." We had a Facebook page we didn't use for 5 years.
Yeah.
We just now implemented our first website.
Yeah.
So
8 years in.
8 years in, and we're proud of that website.
Yeah.
We did it right.
Yep.
But even there, we used some creative financing.
Yep.
CSAs. All of our farms have CSAs, so we offered CSA as part of payment. We do a lot of bartering,
Yeah.
and that's another creative way to say, what do I have a lot of
Yeah.
that I can share
Yep.
in order to get things that I need that I can't pay for.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. I think.
And that's, I'd just like to double click on that a little bit. All of us end up with surplus of things that could have value to somebody else.
Right.
And so being able to look at that and say, okay, how do I take this thing that would otherwise waste?
Right.
Right? We just probably wouldn't sell it, wouldn't be able to move this because we have so much surplus or enough surplus that we're comfortable making that trade. And it can offset those costs or it can just defray them entirely.
Yeah. Yeah, and that includes your own skills.
Yeah.
If there's something that you're really good at that other farms or people in your network are missing, consider offering yourself for consulting services. And it's something I've done to pay my own salary at
Yep.
times,
Yep.
was to look outside and say, what could I do with the environment we're in? Where could I offer services that would cover my salary for the year and I'm not dipping out of the business?
Yeah, so back to your point earlier about networking is you're not going to even necessarily know that there are people out there who would be able to kind of create that balance
Yeah.
for you if you're not doing that relationship building to begin with. Like that really is, I think especially in farming, there are a lot of us who are introverts.
Yeah.
And we work in sort of an isolated space and for a lot of the time. And so we may not be going out and having all of the, networking
Yeah.
opportunities or seeking those networking
Yeah.
opportunities that we could to kind of unwrap some of those places where we might be able to partner and collaborate.
And an easy one for me, whether you're flowers or your food or whatever you're selling in your hub, look for the conferences that your customers are attending. So
Yeah.
for us, we started going to the school nutrition conferences that the state held every year,
Yeah.
once a year.
Yep.
All the school districts are there. Our goal was not to pick up more school districts.
Right.
We've really never advertised for customers. Our goal was to understand the market.
Yep.
We got to see all the other people who are selling into the schools.
Yeah.
Right? Now, fast forward, I was one of the keynote speakers at the school conference this year.
Yep.
So those opportunities come through relationship building.
Yeah.
And we do have schools call us. We get challenged all the time. Well, if you're doing this and this and this, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
You know, and again, we can do some things, but we don't have any freezers.
Yeah.
So if it involves frozen anything, I can't do it now. Even
Yeah.
if it looks great, if the money looks great, can't go there because the infrastructure investment is beyond what we're prepared for this moment.
And that's how you're kind of revealing these opportunities, is through those conversations.
Yep.
So you recognize this need. There's a need for
Yep.
freezer capabilities. You clearly are not set up today
Yeah.
to be able to handle that. And you've built the partnerships
Yeah.
through all of this networking to really seek out these grants and these opportunities to fund investment in the infrastructure, which then opens a door for you to a whole new market.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're just sort of trying to seek out any capital to be able to just kind of offset operating expenses. It's
Yeah.
that you're being really strategic and looking for places to invest that have a huge payoff for you down the road.
Well, and I'll tell you a little story. We recently had the need to store some frozen meat. We don't have any freezers. Now we have a local storage facility. It's expensive.
Yeah.
We've done it, but it's really expensive. And I had remembered that one of our school districts had very large freezers in the district
Yeah.
office.
Yep.
On a whim, I called them up and said, hey, any chance we could store things in your freezer? Oh, heck yeah, we got room. If you, even beyond this project, if you want to do that, and a marriage was born. This time, we were looking for cooler space because we had an abundance of apples. And so the deal was, while we're using your cooler space, whatever apples that you want, they come free.
Yeah.
And we made that arrangement with the vendor.
Look at that bartering.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's huge. Yeah.
And they had the space, we needed it.
Yep.
And while they were there, they got the free apples. So just don't underestimate talking about what you need.
Yeah.
Talk to your customers, talk to your peers.
Yep.
Make sure you have some people in your network who
Yeah.
are outside of the business that you do.
Yeah.
People who are bankers or investors or nonprofits. They look at it differently than you do.
They
and
do.
you never know when a good idea is going to come up out of one of those conversations.
Yeah. And I think we've partnered
Absolutely.
on a lot of those, right? Where we can kind of come to this place of saying, you're needing particular tools and resources, and those obviously cost money to invest in. And so we've partnered on some of these grants to say, how do we work together to build these tools that benefit you and allow you to kind of just unlock or just reduce the human resources that you're using on a daily basis to try to accomplish these same tasks. And so that's another place where I think you've been really just thoughtful and creative about how you're looking at your resources. You're saying, okay, I'm spending all of this time to do this thing, and it's taking me hours every week. I feel like this could be automated. How do I think creatively about how to get back my time so that I can spend it doing other things?
Yeah.
So as we're thinking here about this sort of review process that we're all in, kind of that we try to do at least annually, but hopefully more frequently. I think there are probably folks out there who are listening and thinking, that sounds great, but where do I start?
Yeah.
Where do I start as I'm thinking about these grants and opportunities and kind of exploring what might be available to me and to my business?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Really have a plan. Have a plan you're trying to accomplish, and then look for a grant that fits. We talked about that earlier. It's not just that the grant has to fit what you want to do. What you want to do has to fit the purpose of the grant. So find a grant writer.
Yeah.
I mean, number one, I can't say anything more about that. That's an industry of its own. So find a grant writer. if you have...
And they pay for themselves, just to be clear.
They
So
do.
It can cost money to hire a grant writer to come in, and also a good grant writer is pretty successful, and they should have statistics on the capital that they've been able to help fund.
Yeah.
They pay for themselves. A decent grant writer does.
The other opportunity I would say is make sure you're networking with peers. Ask them if they're involved in grants.
Yep.
And offer to write letters of support.
Yeah.
Even if you're not directly involved in the grant, this is relationship building and
Yeah.
it's trust building. And so the more that you can help somebody else get a grant that they're looking for,
Yep.
when your time comes and you need those letters of support, they'll be there for you. So not everything is an immediate payback, but everything gets you towards the end goal. We also meet with our vendors. Last year we had our first in-person all-vendor meeting. And in that time, we sent out an agenda ahead of time. We talked about the challenges and what's important to them. We talked about the fact that we have crops that our customers are asking for. We'd rather not buy them outright from somebody in southern Wisconsin. Who's willing to put up, like lunchbox peppers? I'll just use that as a great example. Schools love lunchbox peppers. And we've seen a definite increase this year in the number of vendors who put some ground to lunchbox peppers. They didn't have to be a, giant, but collectively it gave us access to a new product. It didn't cost us anything, but it's sharing the vision with them and letting them share with you. We would have never found out, Farm A is putting in a whole refrigerated section and they'd be willing to be a hub if we didn't know what they were doing. So you can't really understand what resources are there for you until you start the networking and asking questions.
And I think a big piece of that networking is in all of our states, we have state-based organizations that can point us in the right direction. And so for you have DATCAP.
We have DATCAP and DPI, and we've invited them to come to the farm, to my partner's farm, see our operation, hear about what we're doing. Next time you're up in the area, stop by. And that has developed, come have lunch with us. They brought some legislators up from time to time, so we have some legislative support. You're driving up from Madison, bring somebody with you, right? So helping those agencies understand that you're committed and where you're driving towards, and finding out which of the things you're doing are interesting to them. Then loop them in. Last year, when I heard that Department of Public Instruction was trying to work more with the Department of Defense on the commodity purchasing, but they just lacked data. I took a couple of days, because I keep all my history. I created a readable file, pivot tables, everything I could do, of our entire 6.5 years of history, and I just gave it to them. I don't care who looks at it. I'm just going to say this. If you're worried that somebody's going to take what you're doing and knock you out of business, that's like the last thing that's going to happen. I freely show anybody who wants to look at what we're doing. No one's going to recreate what we've done. No one's going to be able to do that. They may do something of their own. They may be successful or not, but don't be afraid to share what you're doing if you're expecting other people to share with you.
And I think that's a really important piece of this creative resourcing conversation, is that it can be easy to put walls up and feel like, coming from this scarcity mindset, which is what you're touching on here, is this like, I'm protective of what I've built, either from sharing information or knowledge or skills or whatever. Bringing down those walls opens us to these opportunities. And I think that's just a really crucial piece of resourcing creatively. So we've talked a lot about all sorts of different approaches to resourcing creatively, and what that looks like for you when you're on year 1 or just in concept stage can be very different from what it looks like in year 8. But the mindset, I think, is the same. And so it's really thinking through all the places where you can either access capital or work collaboratively across your supply chain with your buyers or with your sellers, and really think about how do you continue refocusing, but also do it in a prudent way that doesn't set you up for too much overhead or failure down the road. So I really appreciate this conversation. I think this is a really important topic for all of us to really be open about and to have conversation around. It can feel really intimidating, but I think having conversation just really is important.
The last thing I will say is don't skip steps. There's a reason it's called ready, set, go.
Yeah.
Ready, we see that there's maybe a need.
Yep.
Set means we've taken the time to understand if we can go there and how we have to go there. Don't go to go before you've completed the ready, set. It is the number one thing I see people doing wrong. You're really anxious to go forward.
Yeah.
It's more like ready, set, pilot in our world.
Yeah. Yep.
But don't skip steps.
Yeah.
You'll regret it in the end.
I agree. I think there's actually value in being resource constrained to a great extent, because it forces you, if you sit with it, it forces you to ruthlessly prioritize, right? It doesn't, if you just had $1 million to go and do whatever you wanted with, you might spend it on
I
silly
might sit on
things.
it for a year and get the interest, and now I've got
Well, there you
20%
go.
more
But
if I'm smart about it, right?
Some folks can sit with that money, and actually it leads them to invest in areas of the business that aren't calling for it.
Right.
And if you sit with the need, it can force you to really prioritize in a way that you might not if you were just sort of swimming in resources. So thank you. I really appreciate this. This is a really fun chat and also really important. But I think this discussion around creative resourcing is something that we'll continue talking about and I'm sure revisit with you.
We need more hubs. We need more aggregators. I mean, dive in. It's a great place. Just come in with the right mindset. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk today.
No, thank you for being here.